uh, I think it's too last minute for us to wait for anyone else. So let's begin. Namo Rihantaram, Namo Siddharam, Namo Ariyanam, Namo Vajjayanam, Namo Le Savvasahunam, Eso Pancha Namukaro Savva Pava Panasano, Mangalanam Chasavesam Padamam Havai Mangalam. Uh, right. So, you've heard of the story of Kalekal Sarvagni Acharya Bhagwan, Srimad Hemchandracharya Bhagwant, who was Guru to Kumarpal Maharaja, who was the king of Gujarat, and other 17 allied nations. When now this is before Hemchandra Suri was not an acharya. He was a muni by the name Somchandra back then, and he had, with the permission, the agni of his Guru Bhagwant, gone from Gujarat towards Kashmir to do sadhana of Saraswati Devi. But before he could get there, I believe somewhere midway only, Saraswati Devi appeared to him and another Mahatma who was present there. And she said, you know, Bhagwant, you are filled with charitra. And we hear in the Dashvaikalik Sutra, Dhammo Mangala Mukitham Ahimsa Sanjamo Tavo, Deva Vittam Namam Santi Jasta Dhamme Sayamano. This dharma of Janeshwar Paramatma is filled with ahimsa, sayam, and tap. And a person, a dharmatma who practices these three types of dharma with, the right bhav, is bowed down to even by devtas. So there is no wonder for a Mahatma, Mahatapasvi Bhagwant like him, Saraswati Devi just comes halfway. People today, they go to random caves, they go to the Himalayas in search of uh, their Ishta Devtas. But here, Kalakacharya Bhagwant has just set out, and before he even gets to Kashmir, Saraswati Devi herself, she comes to greet Kalakacharya Bhagwant, and she says, she appears at night, and she says, tell me, what do you want? And so, uh, Hemchandra Sureshwari Maharaja, who was back then known as Somchandra Muni, he says, look, if you want to grant me something, grant me, the assistance, the ability to become excellent in various facets of knowledge so that I can do Shasan Prabhavana and that I can, help other people also attain the true Dharma. And Saraswati Devi, there's another Mahatma, I forgot the name. He's also right there. And Saraswati Devi offers a modak. Now, modak, when we say modak, we're so used to seeing the Ganesh Chaturthi modaks and the Maharashtrian modaks essentially on Instagram. But modak is actually the Sanskrit name for laddu. So she offers that to him. And remember, it's night time. And to the other Mahatma too. And now that this modak is offered, the younger Mahatma, he immediately jumps. He's like, "Oh, it's night time. We're sadhus. We can't eat at night." And so he refuses. Somchandra Muni, who is well versed in Utsarg and Apvad, which is what we're going to be discussing now, sees what Janagya would be at this time, where Labh lies, where a Labh, that you know, is there a loss? If there is a loss, does it get toppled by the pros? And considering all of that, he consumes that modak, that laddu, and he grows on to be excellent. Obviously, there is his own sadhana out there, but he grows on to be the great, great Acharya Bhagwan that we know, who is obviously served by Saraswati Devi throughout till the end of his life. And for people like Kalekal Saragnya Hemchandra Sureshwari Maharaja, even Brahmins uh, back then and even today in the recent past, they would refer to these Acharya Bhavans, Haribhadra Sureshwari Maharaja, Hemchandra Sureji, Upadhyaya Yashojaji Maharaja, as Kurchal Saraswati. Saraswati Devi, we know, is a woman. She's a feminine deity. These Pandits belonging to other faiths would say that your Acharyas are Kurchal Saraswati. That is, they are Saraswatis with a mustache and a beard because they look like men, but their knowledge is so brilliant, it even topples that of Saraswati. And we hear of these incidents in the past, but even in the recent last century, there was a pandit named Ishwar Chandraji who had, under the influence of Dayanand Saraswati, become gotten inclined towards the teachings of Arya Samaj, and he started disbelieving in idol worship, etc. The partition of India happened, and he left his hometown with nothing, and he came to India, and that's where he started teaching various Mahatmas, uh, Prem Sareshwari Maharaja, uh, and various other Mahatmas of the Samudaya. He's even taught Punyapal Sareshwari Maharaja, and I've heard it from the Gacharipati Bhagwan himself that he earlier was such a staunch Arya Samajas that although he knew Sanskrit, he knew other literary scriptures of other religions, he would uh, always criticize idol worship, and he would be like, There's nothing in Jainism, there's no god." He would call it an atheistic faith because Arya Samajists are, they are puritanists when it comes to the Vedas. So he would criticize the agams, and but when he started teaching these Mahatmas, he got so imbibed with the teachings of Jainism that he started believing in Jin Murti and Jin Agams, and he started, reciting the Namaskar Mahamantra every day. And he essentially started practicing a lot of conducts that are prescribed by the scriptures with faith, of course. This Ishwar Chandraji Pandit often would say the same thing, that your Acharya Bhagwans are like the masculine version of Saraswati Devi. They are the Kurchal Saraswati. The point here is different. We're looking at the incident where Somchandra Muni ate at night. Jain Sadhu Bhagwans have 5 Mahavrats. Sarvatha Pranatipat Viraman Vrat, that is complete abstinence from all forms of hinsa, be it by Manas and Kaya, and be it by doing it to yourself, getting it done, or condoning someone who's done it. These 9 types will follow everywhere. Sarvatham Rushabad Viramandra, that is abstaining from speaking falsehood, and so on and so forth. So that's 5 Mahavrats, and the sixth Vrat, that is Ratri Bhojan Viraman Vrat. There are 4 types of ahar that we consume, which are Ashan, Pan, Khadim, and Swadim, according to how the scriptures classify it. This includes most foods and liquids. And all of these foods and liquids are absolutely forbidden for Jain sadhavans to ever consume in their life. Now, one would think that eating at night in this manner would be a breach of their Mahavrat. Uh, you know, and we also know that when one Mahavrat breaks, all other Mahavrats also break. So the question is, was it really right? And if it was really right, then what is stopping other Mahatmas from eating at night? And what situations, what conditions would necessitate doing such an action? So this is where Utsarg and Apvad, the question that Jash Bhai put forth in the group, what Apvad Marg exactly is. This is the nature of Utsarg and Apvad in Jainism. Now, in context of Apvad only, let's look at another example. We know that in the Agam, such as Dashvekalik Sutra, in Uttarajan Sutra, there has been a lot that has been said about how a sadhu should practice brahmacharya, and for practicing the optimum level of brahmacharya, different, 9 different metaphorical fences have been set up by the scriptures. So as to protect, the Mahatma from falling into anything wrong or immoral. Other dharmas show the same 5 Mahavrats in the forms of 5 yams and niyams, ahimsa, satya, astya, and so on. But it is the minute care that has been taken in Jainism to actually practice these vows that sets our dharma apart from, like one notch above the others. So uh, these 9 fences are also very well known to most people. It includes not staying in the same, house, or building or mansion where a woman or a transgender is staying, and for women it's the other way around. Not staying in a place where animals are also living. Not staying in a place where you can hear uh, you know uh, sounds pertaining to some sort of lustful activity from across the wall, and so on. There are 9 fences, and uh, the scriptures also say that, you shouldn't stay, a sadhu bhagan shouldn't stay in a place where there are paintings of women and etc. So a lot of care has been taken to preserve the brahmacharya vrat of Mahatmas. Now, there was one sadhana that Kalakacharya, he, Kalakal Sarvagnya Acharya Bhagwan Sri Hemchandra Saraswati Maharaja's Guru Devchandra Suriji wanted him and his two other Guru Bhais to do. Now, this sadhana was something extremely specialized. It needed, the presence of a Shasan Devta. You had to invoke a Shasan Devta, and for this, the sadhana was decided to be done in front of the Pratima of Neminath Bhagwan in Girnar. I forgot to mention this when we were in Girnar earlier in the beginning of this year. Um, in fact, it was one of the first things that occurred to my mind earlier. But anyway, so one can imagine how powerful that Pratima also is, that even great Acharya Bhagwans like him chose the Sanadhi of this Paramatma to do this sadhana. Now, this sadhana required the presence of a Padmini Stri. A Padmini Stri is a type of woman who uh, who obviously looks so divine, but she also smells so divine that even the body odor that she secretes attracts, bees and other insects, as if they're trying to pollinate a flower. And so they were on the lookout for a Padmini Stri. And this is not, just the plan was not just to have the woman stay there while doing sadhana, but the woman has to be completely naked, and the Mahatmas are supposed to focus on the Paramatma of the Pratima of Neminath Bhagwan, and the Stree has to be there as an Uttar Sadhika, that as in, in the role of an assistant. She really doesn't have to do anything. This is a test of those Mahatmas, Brahmacharya and other abilities. And we know that Tap and Brahmacharya are two excellent ways to attract Devtas. So this is the Amnai, the ritual which they had to undertake. And for this, they kept on searching, and they realized that the Thakur of Junagadh, where Girnar is situated, his wife was a Padmini Stri. So they requested the Thakur. Obviously, they gave him, a very good updesh, and they told the Thakur that this is the case, and we require the assistance of your wife. So if you and your wife could please come, and your wife has to be in this state. If you and your wife could please come, we'd be obliged. So at first, the Thakur is kind of stunned because, hey, what are you asking? And the very next instant, Dev Chandra Sariji Maharaja also says that uh, if any of my Mahatmas even turn their sight away from Paramatma and try to, cast a glance upon your wife, keep a sword ready in your hand, and you can just you can slay their head off. So the Thakur, he reluctantly initially agreed, and then he saw the sadhana and how, focused these Mahatmas were. And then the Shasandev came, and each of them asked for, the Shasanev asked each of the three of the Mahatmas for different boons, and all of them grew up to be great people in their respective fields. Now, the point is that while on the one hand the scriptures say that sadhus aren't supposed to stay in these areas, sadhus aren't even supposed to stay in a place where there are paintings of women, let alone a place where women are staying or women are present. So in such a case, how can they afford to permit a ritual wherein a woman is standing naked? So this is all of these things. There are hundreds of incidents like these in the scriptures. All of these point out to what is known as the Apvad Marg in Jainism. We know that the Shasan is Anekantmay. There is no absolution, which means that everything is relative. And if you were to think a little more, this relativity is also relative, which means that certain things are also absolute. Okay, if this is unclear, please stop me before we proceed. There is Anekant in the Shasan, but this Anekant is also to be applied keeping in mind the principles of Anekantvad, which means that in certain cases, there are absolute statements as well. Now, keeping these ekants and anekants together, we realize that of the five Mahavrats and the sixth Mahavrat, you can include that in the first for now, Ahimsa. Of these five Mahavrats, barring the fourth Mahavrat, that is Brahmacharya, the direct violation thereof, that is, all of the remaining four Mahavrats and their, sub rules, each of these have an upward mark to them, which is that the Agams say that there is a number of upwards available in this Shasan equal to the number of Utsargs. So wherever I make a statement, so essentially, if there are 100 highways, there are also 100 diversions to get onto the same destination. The diversions aren't meant for everyone. The diversions are meant for specific people in a specific set of circumstances in a specific time period and for a specific time period. Who can use that diversion? Who gets the clearance to use that diversion is a matter of discretion that is exercised by Gitarth Guru Bhagwans and not by ordinary sadhus, for that matter. So, let alone Shravaks. Of the 45 agams that we have, there are six agams that are known as the Chet Sutras, and these include, Vyavhar Sutra, Nishit Sutra, Mahanishit Sutra, Bruhatkal Sutra, etc. These Chet Sutras deal with certain very obscure entities uh, and elements. They deal with various forms of prayashchit. They deal with, more importantly, various forms of apvad. What diversion to take in what scenario. For instance, um, in the Bruhatkal Sutra, there are obviously far more, grave upwards, which obviously aren't meant for discussion in public or even for the knowledge of Shravaks, for that matter. A very primitive one. If a sadhu, if an Acharya Bhagwant and his group, they are staying in a place where the householder is not the friendliest, and he suddenly, you stay there and you realize that he could perhaps turn hostile towards you. There are mentions of how two Malla sadhus are essentially two muscular sadhus. Uh, they stand to the left and right side of the Acharya, they flank the Acharya Bhagwant. And when the Acharya Bhagwant tries to talk, peacefully with the householder, in the event that things escalate and the householder tries to attack the Acharya Bhagwant, these Malla sadhus can also intervene and do what is necessary to, ensure that the Acharya Bhagwant is protected. So this is just one example. There are apvads scattered everywhere. We also practice apvads in our life from time to time. For those people who know the marg, uh, while doing puja, the vidhi is to do Trikal puja. Puja three times a day. In the morning, you do Vasakshep puja. In the afternoon, Ashtabhagari puja. And in the evening, Arati. For a person who wants to do this, but because of, say, reasons such as he has to, earn his bread and it's not feasible for him to do puja thrice a day, the scriptures say that you can also do puja once in a day and you can do all these three things together then. So for people who want to practice, again, people who want to be on the right path, people who want to practice the utsarg, but for some reason are unable to do it, the Shastrakar Bhagwans offer an upward which keeps them, which lets them do their aradhana, hoping that at one point perhaps they will reach the highway again. And in the event that they end up, dying while they're still practicing the upward, they know that this diversion also has the seal and the stamp of Jineshwar Paramatma and Acharya Bhagwans, right? So, accordingly, there are so many Shravaks who would like to do Trikal Puja, but because of certain extenuating circumstances, they can't. So they do puja once a day. I do not intend to include most of us because most of us do not even wish to do Trikal Puja, and this clearly shows when we have holidays, etc. When we have all the time in the world, we still don't do it. So for us, it's not even an apvad; it is just a vidhi. Similarly, when you hear of the timing for Pratikraman, ideally, uh, the main Pratikraman Sutra, which is Vanditu in case of Shravaks, that is supposed to be performed when the sun is setting in the evening. But nowadays, Sadhu Bhagwans and Shravaks, they do Pratikraman together. And Acharyas have seen Labh in them doing Pratikraman together, because had this not been the case, Shravaks would perhaps lose touch and a lot of things. So Sadhu Bhagwans often wait for Shravaks to come, because of which Pratikraman in most songs today, it gets delayed, and you end up getting done with it pretty late. So this is also a form of upward. In some, everything that we see has an upward to some degree, but to what degree is not always something that is open to discussion publicly. There are similarly upwards also exist for abhaksha food, uh, and so on and so forth. The issue with discussing them before a mixed audience, before an audience that is not Gambhir, and this is a problem that most sadhugans encounter, is that Shravaks will hear this and be like, oh, this can also be done. But the circumstances in which that was prescribed are very different from the circumstances of your case. So, when you fail to apply that vivek in your mind, it becomes very difficult to it becomes very difficult for the acharya and for the preacher to disclose something of this nature. But is there something specific that you were looking at while in context of the Apvad Marg, Jashbhai?
Yeah, so I have actually, as you know, right? Like my family follows like Dada Bhagwan, and we come from that side of the world.
Hmm.
So there, what we have heard is there is a story, when Adinath Bhagwan was giving, Diksha to all the sons, like there is the story of Bahubali and Bharat Chakravarti and all that happens, and then towards the end, I think Bharat Chakravarti is the only one who is left who hasn't taken Diksha, and since he's a Chakravarti Raja, so essentially I think there's some conversation that happens between the two of them, and eventually Adinath Bhagwan gives him a path mark where he can achieve liberation without actually taking monkhood, and which is where this whole story happens, that he continues to rule the kingdom, and then in the middle of like he's practicing like Bharatnatyam, and eventually in the Hall of Mirrors he gets this ring gets lost, and he realizes that okay, everything is very temporary, and then he achieves liberation and stuff like that. So I figured that that's what you were talking about, and I think somewhat it aligns with it. I don't know if the story is actually canon from the Jain scriptures.
So, now the story in the first half at least is correct, in that all of his sons take Diksha towards the end, Bahubali Ji too, after the war between the two brothers. Bharat Chakravarti never sought Diksha in the first place, and that was because of his uh, his extreme darshan monia, charitra monia karma, which prevents a person from taking vrats of a sadhu. In a sense, there is no harm in saying that the Shravak Marg is an upward of the Sadhu Marg, because verily speaking, a Shravak can only be called a Shravak when he has the lalsa, the burning desire to take Diksha. It A desire, let's not say burning, a wish to take Diksha. So any Shravak who claims to be a Shravak but does not even think that Diksha is worth taking, or that there is a moksha marg apart from Diksha, is certainly in the wrong, and is certainly not a Shravak, not even a Samyadrashti, let alone a Shravak. Bharat Chakravarti knew that the only marg to attain moksha is by way of charitra, and while he could not take it at that moment, that he continues to rule the six continents, the six land masses for a long period of time. A lot of things happen in his life. Even the incidents that transpire, it is the Samyak Darshan of Bharat Chakravarti that is worth noticing. The various activities he undertakes, the way he's feeding all of these Sadharmic brothers, fellow Shravaks of his, in the millions, and the way he establishes the entire stratum of Brahmins, Jain Brahmins. He composes the four Arya waits for them, how he does Sadharmik Bhakti, how he does Bhakti of Janeshwar Paramatma, how he undertakes the first uh, Charipalit Sang, how he does Pratishta of Ashtapad Parvat, Ashtapad Tirth on the mountain Ashtapad, Sihanashadya Prasad, after the Nirvana of Rishabdev Bhagwan. All of these things clearly show his inclination was towards Paramatma's marg. But since he couldn't, he did duties that were appropriate for him as a Shravak. And now, when you hear after the consecration of Ashtapad, then Bharat Chakravarti enters, the Sihanashadya Prasad, the temple that he's made, and he does Stuti of Paramatma. A very important thing he says is that, uh, O Swami, everyone in your family, you, my brothers, my sisters, my grandmother, all of you attained moksha, but I think I am the black sheep in my family because I am the only person who could not leave this sansar and, come to the other side. Which also shows the profound regret that he had um, for not being able to take charitra. And it is this regret, this sense of imprisonment, because Samyak Darshan has five attributes, and one of them is Nirved, feeling a sense of imprisonment in the sansar and, yearning to break free of it, just like an inmate in a jail. This Nirved is shown from time to time in his life, and you can see it in his words as well. And it is this Samyak Darshan that ultimately, leads to it leads to the weakening of your kashais, and there comes a point where the his kashais have weakened to a considerable extent, and he's sitting in the chamber of mirrors in the Arisa Bhavan, and we all know the story of how the ring falls off his finger, and he realizes that his finger looks so plain and distasteful without the ornament that he's adorned it with. So one by one he starts taking off all his ornaments, all his jewelry, and he realizes that his body, after all, is very mortal, and it's going to fade in the matter of certain several thousand years maybe, but at some point in time for sure. And that immediately brings back, the buried vairagya within him, and within a matter of a few moments he attains Keval Gyan. Now, we just see that he sat and he attained Keval Gyan. But what happened in this, in the matter of a few moments, is actually pretty interesting to dissect. And this requires a lot of thinking. There's an entire procedure that one has to undergo in terms of the Gunasthanak, in terms of, the structuring and, essentially rearranging of your uh, karma, etc. And all of this requires a lot of effort. There is, for instance, there is a particular type of gyan known as pratib gyan that is attained prior to attaining keval gyan, and once a person crosses that step, the physical and mental and spiritual fatigue that you feel is extremely profound. So all of this happened, all of these things which take even Tirthankar's years happen to Bharat Chakravarti in what we see is a matter of a few seconds, and he attained keval gyan. And true, the position is that he did attain Kevalgyan in the garb of a householder, but not because he wanted to lead the life of a householder, because he wanted to practice Diksha. So ultimately, even there, the reason for his Kevalgyan is his inclination towards Sarvavirti, which at that point in time translated into Bhav Charitra. And it is this Bhav Charitra that led to his Kevalgyan. Had this been an acceptable marg, or, had this been the case to say, oh, even Shravaks can go to moksha, so there's no absolute requirement in Jainism to take Diksha if you want to attain moksha. Uh, the Tirthankar Bhagwans are very well aware of that, because forget Bharat Chakravarti's Kevalgyan for a second. We go back a few thousand years in time. The same Bharat Chakravarti, when he discovers that his son Marichi is going to become the 24th Tirthankar and the first Vasudev, he is he's overjoyed, and he bows down to Marichi, and he tells Marichi of the good news. And Marichi, he has a moment of pride, which leads to further karma, etc. And at a later point in time, this same Marichi, who, mind you, is leading the life of a bar vradhari shravak. He was a sadhu, but he could not practice the vows of a sadhu, so he started, he carved out a different attire for himself, uh, with the janoi and the orange clothes, a chhatra on his head, etc. And but the marg that he preaches is that of Paramatma's. He practices the life of a Bharvadhari Shravak. He has a weak moment, and when this prince called Kapil comes to him, and Kapil he realized that Kapil is not fit to take Diksha at this point, so might as well use him for my path. And his path is not a bad path because it is the path of a Shravak. So when Kapil asks him, "O Prabhu, where is Dharma?" Marichi tells him, "Kapila ithampi ihayampi." Kapil, Dharma is also present with Rishabdev Bhagwan, and Dharma is also present here, which the Shastrakar Bhagwans categorically call out and criticize as Utsutra Prarupana. And this Utsutra Prarupana, just one statement, led to the Atma of Mahavir Swami Bhagwan increase his sansar by one Koda Kodi Sagropam, which in simple mathematical terms is just countless years. So we do understand that, you know, showing the Shravak Jivan or showing any kind of householder life as an ideal is never acceptable in the Jain Shasan, because this dharma is one that only focuses on absolute ahimsa, and that is only possible in by Manvachan and Kaya. It is only possible in the life of a Sadhu Bhagwan. So to give it that ascent essentially by the Tirthankars is also not possible. And in the case of Bharat Chakravarti, Indra Maharaja, he realizes that Bharat Chakravarti has attained Keval Gyan. Indras in the Jain Shasan are hailed as people, as devtas who have extraordinarily brilliant Samyak Darshan. Which is why even in stotras like Bhaktamar, we give the example of Indras bowing down to Paramatma. Because Indras really have reached that level. Their sense of vivek, their sense of judging between right and wrong, knowing what to do when, is truly exemplary. So when Indra comes to Bharat Chakravarti, he does not bow down to Bharat Chakravarti immediately. He says, Bhagwant, put this vesh on, and he's brought the garb of a sadhu with him. He says, put this garb on, and once you've done that, I'll do Vandan to you. So this is a very tiny thing, but it shows a lot of Vivek. The Vivek in context being, if Indra were to do Vandan to Bharat Chakravarti like that, and he is a Keval Gyani already, but just so that the marg is preserved, just so that people know that only sadhu bhagwans, only sadhuta is the way to attain keval gyan, and that sadhuta is always complemented by external sadhuta as well, unless your ayush is obviously going to end anytime soon. uh it's always backed with it always brings with it external sadhuta, which is the garb of a sadhu, the instruments of a sadhu like rajoharan, muhapati, etc. So sure, you can call it an upward as an exceptional case, but it is not an upward marg. But if you're referring to the Shravak Jivan for a person who wants to become a sadhu but cannot, you can, from that perspective, also say that the Shravak Jivan is an upward to the Sadhu Jivan. But this is in no way to say that leading the life of a householder is okay.
Yeah, fair enough. Matlab, I think the takeaway for me at least was that Vairagya is the most critical aspect of it. Because there are also other incidents, like you have Marudevi Mata, you have Bahubali also, who almost in all these cases they did not formally take any form of like diksha or
No,
anything, but
so
they did have bhav, like you mentioned, they would have bhav charitra, and then there would be like this aspect that they want to actually leave the whatever sansar and go towards diksha, but uh, I don't think I have read anywhere that they have actually taken the garb of a sadhu bhagwant, at least before their keval gnan. And you are right that in essence we shouldn't take that as a reference point for us, because that those are definitely exceptional cases, and it's not something that has been prescribed for
yeah,
the
also
common man. Yeah,
it's not even about the common man. It's also a matter of fact that it happened because they were able to reach that bhav there. For most people, and especially in the Avsarpani Kal, these external limits and external alambans are more important than anything else. And had
right.
Bharat Chakravarti, you saw, if Bharat Chakravarti truly had attained Keval Gyan, all without any external alamban, and if he did not want to show the importance of that alamban, he could have, he could have simply refused to take that garb. But even Keval Gyani Bhagwans know that this Vesh is useless for him after attaining Keval Gyan. What is it going to do for him? But it is so important to maintain the shasan and the shasan requires anushasan. That is to say, it requires discipline. You're required to maintain discipline. So, you know, Upadaji Bhagwant also says in one place that those people who, push forth the examples of Bharat Chakravarti and Marudeva Mata to, say it's okay to live in the sansar and, lead a detached life, have a controlled, enjoyment and everything, do pratikraman for whatever sin you do, and you'll be clear of, you'll be nil, you'll be good to go ahead. Upajaji Bhavan, he calls them out and he says that this is absolutely ridiculous. And, this is not tenable at all, because this is essentially opening the floodgates of Viradna for a lot of people. So, and then he also says that you hear of infinite people who have gone to moksha by practicing Diksha in the way that has been prescribed, not only prescribed, but also practiced by Tirthankars themselves. And yet, why does your site only stick at, those exceptional cases? Upadhyay Bhagwant asks this question. And then he says, perhaps it is because your vision has always been towards the sansaric material in the first place. So there's a lot of discussion to this in the scriptures. Uh, Smith, you were saying something?
Yeah, Pranam, I had a question, actually a more factual one, not exactly related to the topic. But since it was brought up, you mentioned that Indra Maharaj brings the garb of sadhu to for Bharat Maharaja. So, like, is it like typically a garb? Because I was under impression that earlier, way back then, the dikshas they would have a more digambar clothing and no garb as such, or how is it?
What would you mean by garb here? You
No, I
define
mean
it.
you said. I mean, it's just they would just bring a rajoran, right? Typically,
Of course not. Thavir Kalpi Mahatmas and most Mahatmas by default are always Thavir Kalpis. Thavir Kalpi Mahatmas have a chol patta. They have like a full garment to cover their loins, and it runs from 4 feet below. Sorry, 4 fingers below the navel to 4 fingers above the knee back then.
okay. I was actually so far I was under impression that way back all dikshas used to be only Digambar diksha. So
No,
okay,
no,
that
no,
I think
absolutely
gets
not.
clear.
In fact, if you read the Granth Pravachan Sarodhar, in Pravachan Sarodhar, there are, I think, 6 to 8 different types of Jin Kalpi Mahatmas. And it is only Jin Kalpi Mahatmas on the higher end of the spectrum who do not have even clothes with them. And no Upkaran
Got
at
it.
all. So even Jin Kalpi Mahatmas wear clothes for the most part.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
And this here, you can also refer to this is in the first parva of Trishashi Shalaka Purush Charitra, just if you want a reference, wherein Indra Maharaja, he comes with he comes with these clothes and he says, "Oh Kevali Bhagwant, take this vesh of a sadhu Bhagwant so that I can bow down to you and I can arrange for your Diksha Mahotsav." And that's when Bahubali ji he does Panchamushti Loch, and he takes the Rajwaran upon himself, and so on and so forth.
Got it. Thanks.
Yes, Yashbhai.
If you want to continue and to cover the questions later, we could do that. I just wanted to ask something.
Sure, sure, go on.
Yeah, so in the beginning, you told about the Modak story of Acharya. So, are you going to cover it later or what?
There's honestly nothing to cover. So my point was, he was Geetarth, and he knew when to forsake Ratri Bhojan, because he knew when the dosh would occur, when it would not occur. The minuteness is obviously not for us to decide. And there are even today, if you look at this Upward and context of Ratri Bhojan, say there's a critical scenario and a Mahatma is about to die sometime at night, and you have to give him some liquid, some elixir which would revive him. And obviously, if his wish is something different, then you give preference to that. But if he can't stay in samadhi, then what do you do?
Right. So we do not have any answer for that. That means.
No, no. So in certain situations, it is permissible by Apvad. That's the point of Apvad. The point is, see, if I keep on saying, oh, you can also feed them at night. You can also do this at night. It'll just we're so used to, finding our own conveniences that will take the first thing that comes our way.
I'm asking about the reason behind the Acharya Maharaj to take it at night. I
Oh,
mean,
so he must have seen, that though he must have applied his perhaps Shrutagyan and seen that there is no doshan having this particular object, and that it is brought by Devtas, so it has to be Achit in the first place. I don't know, there's no description or there's no mention of, or there's no revelation to why he decided in favor of it. Because firstly, food that is brought by Devtas is also Dev pinned, and fruit and such food is not even permissible for consumption by sadhus. So uh, he alone knows what the reason would have been.
all right, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this in sum is the upward mark. Uh, like I said, the number of utsargs, an equal number of upwards, except for uh, grave cases. There are categorically there are three of them that are listed. There's at least three of them that are lifted in the scriptures. So there's one which pertains to uh, celibacy. There's one that pertains to consumption of fire. There's one that pertains to uh, you know consumption of direct water that isn't boiled. So these three are absolute musts, and there's no departures from them. But in respect of everything else, you'll find an exception. If there's any other questions, please feel free to throw them. Judge by, I hope I've done justice to your question.
Yep, yep. I think this was really useful and very enlightening. Thank you.
All right, we'll end in that case. Thank you everyone for joining at such a short notice. Pranam. Good
Thank
night.
you, Pranav.
Thank you. Bye bye.